All right. I'd like to welcome everyone today to the Exit Your Way Roundtable. With me today, I've got Curt Anderson. So, Curt, welcome and glad to have you.
Hey, thank you, Damon, man. This is a huge honor, and just this has been a great. You and I, connected on LinkedIn. So anybody that's been a little, geez, LinkedIn, this is a perfect example of building relationships on LinkedIn and the power of what that network can do. It's just wonderful. So, from our first conversation up till tonight, it's been a great friendship and building
Yeah.
professional network, and so it's been great. So thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, you're very welcome, Curt. And Curt, it's from the beginning, man. When I heard what you did and what you do, it's just it to me. It's very cool because exciting subject for me, and like accountants get excited about doing books. I get
Right,
excited about manufacturing and e-commerce. So it's good
right.
stuff. So can you tell me a little bit about your background, Curt? Just kind of what kind of got you where
Yeah.
what you're doing today?
Yeah. Gee, where do I start? You and I are from similar generations. So,
Yeah,
graduated from college, I think 30 years ago next week. Time just flies
yeah, it
by.
does.
And so, long story short, right out of college, I took over. It was a defunct wholesale business, and was just kind of struggling with that, and just 20 something, just trying to figure out life, and didn't college didn't teach you how to entrepreneurship. And 1995, man, this whole internet thing. I don't know if you remember, like America Online was sending out little discs from Super Bowl ads and 14.4 modems and all that fun stuff
Oh
back in
yeah,
the 90s.
yeah.
So I got into e-commerce basically for one reason only. It was out of sheer desperation. I tried every idea possible, and just I'm like, it's 1995, and hey, what's
Yeah.
this e-commerce thing? I'm in my 20s, I'm young, dumb, and let's take a shot. So what's fascinating is you and I lived through the .com
Yeah.
era, and 9/11 and all that, and so I think the people that got into e-commerce and got to the other side, and I had a small business, so I wasn't like I was chasing venture capital or anything like that. But
Yeah.
when you got into the other side, and then when Google hit the scene, that just really changed everything. Social media hit like 2000, mid 2000, Facebook '03, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that took
Yeah.
companies to the next level. I ended up selling about 2010, and I wish that I had a Damon in my life and an Exit Your Way, and I desperately want to talk about that in our conversation. And then I found, after I was young, I was like 40 something, 41, whatever, when I sold
Yeah.
the business. What I'd like to hear from you is, I really didn't know what to do. I'd like, you put your heart and soul 7 days a week, the typical
Oh
entrepreneur
yeah.
cliches, and all of a sudden it comes to a screeching halt. And now what? And
Yeah.
so my passion, my heart just kind of fell in. I was looking for another business to buy, and I found out I was horrible at finding a business to buy because I never found one. But I really enjoyed consulting with people, and
Yeah.
in particular e-commerce. And because again, 10 years ago, it was, it's a 25-year-old industry. It's still relatively new.
Yeah.
And I connected and resonated with a lot of the digital immigrants, a lot of, like, you and I are Gen X, a lot of
Yeah.
baby boomers. And I'm in the Rust Belt, and I'm in upstate New York, Lakewood, New York. And so I gravitated towards manufacturers. I love the widget maker, and the idea is like, how can we take your widget? You've been doing this great for 30 years. Let's get it on e-commerce. So
Yeah.
if I could spin this back, so kind of tying in, and I'm going to spin a question back to you. There, particularly like the 2000s, venture capital, angel investors are such a hot buzz. So many people flock to that, gravitated towards that industry. You're on the other side, which I find just so fascinating and so intriguing, and so it's nurturing and it's helpful. It's such a necessity what you do. How did you pick the exit game instead of the startup side?
Well, I think it was because let's see, it was part circumstance
Yeah,
and part because as I was working in my career, I started running companies for people that had owned a lot of businesses, first of all, and then into the investment buyers like private equity or holding companies, that kind of stuff. And then we were always working in established companies, and I only saw the buy and sell side of established companies, and I never even really knew what a startup was.
Right. Right. It wasn't in your thing. Right. Right.
Yeah, I was in the established companies, and that's really where I started to hone the skills of how do you prepare a company to start up, or to sell, and what are people going to look at, and especially in the investment buyers, the private equity groups or other strategic buyers that know what they're doing, and that's where I really got into that part of it. And honestly, the part of growing the business is where I really enjoy, because to me it's a big game. It's like it's like playing. I love baseball. I think it's just like playing baseball. To me, it's like this whole strategy of what do I do in the second inning that means I'm going to win in the ninth inning. And that's really what it is. And in business, a lot of times it's what you do off the field and the preparation that you do, or even in those first few innings in a baseball game that make it a blowout in the ninth inning.
Right.
That's really what I try to focus on, is how to, I always love that part of it, is how do you create this team or this business that just dominates an industry.
Right.
And I'm half crazy, so that helps me.
Well, and we're both big baseball fans. I use baseball analogies for business literally probably almost daily. So I think you and I totally connected on that. But it's great because you come in, you've gotten past the adolescent stage, you've gotten past like the awkward teenage years. You almost come in, and do you see you come in at the mature side, and you almost come in where they've almost gone a little too long, too far, and try to prop it back up?
Sometimes we do. Sometimes, yeah, it is, and that's one of the things I think you really have to do, like with what you're doing too. Like if you're going to bring an e-commerce strategy to a company, you can't do it in a company where the owners is so comfortable in where they're at that they're like, well, I really don't want to make a change, because everything's good in my life and I don't want to upset everything. And it's honestly, you can run a company like that a long time. And just like for you, it's the same for us. They have to want to change. And
absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
And that resistance is always tough. I'm sure you encounter, but when a company reaches out to you, though, I'm assuming that the top management leaders, that they're looking for a change. Otherwise, they're not contacting you.
Yeah, they are. Well, usually a lot of times we get contacted by an owner that wants to sell their business, right? So, okay, you contacted me, you want to sell a business. And the first thing we start talking about is, well, how much money do you need if you're going to retire? Because that's by and large the biggest thing.
One of the first questions.
Yeah, how much you need? And a lot of times they don't know.
Right.
Because like most of us, we don't want to think about that part in our life, right? We're all putting it in the back of our head until it slaps us in the face. But they aren't thinking about it. So that's really where we have to start with them, because they have to be thinking about that, and they have to have a number in their head, because their business, if they're thinking about selling their business, the biggest reason that you won't sell a business is it's not worth enough money.
Right. And typically the business owner thinks that the value is here. I don't know if you can see my hand, is at one level, and reality is it's typically at a lower level.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, your child's the most athletic and the prettiest and it's like your business, and like you think your business is worth a lot more than what it really is. But do you I almost so many, and I don't know, and I hope this doesn't sound male driven, but so many men identify themselves with their career, where I really credit women, because I think they're much better at being mom or different aspects of their career, where a lot of times guys like just really identify themselves with their career, where what I've found is a lot of entrepreneurs, when they sell that business, it's I don't know if you'll agree with this, it's almost like a grieving process, where like that identity is gone, and they're trying to and they've identified themselves so deeply with that business that they have a difficult time transitioning to the new self. Do you experience that, or do you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, we see it all the time, and those are the people that are going to die at their desk. That's what we call it. They're going to die at their desk. I mean,
Right.
particularly if we talk to a business owner that's over 70, they're probably going to die at their desk.
Really?
Yeah.
The business is almost it's
Well,
almost unsellable. Is that what you?
Not necessarily that. It's just they don't want to leave.
They don't. Okay. They're
and two, the other thing is that sometimes they look at it as not a good thing, and then you have other people that are ready for it, and this is, man, this is the biggest emotional thing you will ever, and you've sold a business, you know what it's like. Now you've gone through the whole process, you know what it's like, and having to refine yourself and refine purpose and move on, and you did it when you were young, and you knew you could find new purpose in these things. Now when you're in that 65, 70-year-old range, you just don't look, it doesn't look the same.
So now it's almost they're looking more retirement hobbies as opposed to new career. Probably not every case, but I'm sure that's, and we have
some people actually that help with that, because it's definitely something where counseling is not a bad
it's a big part of the whole. It's an emotional process, and that's and I might talk about this before. I wish I would have read this advice. I think it was the founder of GoDaddy, Bob Parsons, was the CEO for many years. He was behind all the great the controversial Super Bowl ads and what have you. And when he sold, he finally did so great internet success story, domain names. And when he finally sold or did his IPO, he had I think it was like Inc. magazine. They said something like, how it was your baby. How did you handle that? And he said, you know what? It was never my baby. It was an investment. It was always my investment, and I treated it as such. And you know who else? The gentleman's name escapes me. Kerry. He was the founder of Big Ass Fans.
Mm-hmm.
He just sold a couple years ago, and had almost almost identical quote. But his quote was same type of thing. Man, it was your baby. You raised it to $500 million. How did you do it? He goes, you know what? It was like my pack of gum until I sold it to you, and then it was your pack of gum. He goes, I wanted to take care of the employees and everything else, but other than that, it was, so I wish I would have known, I wish I would have read those pieces of advice, back when. I think if you can remove the emotion and treat it more of an investment, I think you're much better, in my opinion. I think you're much better going into that process.
Yeah. That's for sure. That's for sure. Well, that's enough about this stuff, Curt. What I would do, what we're talking about today, I mean, because I can talk about this stuff for hours.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think is cool for us to talk about today is what you've done and what you help companies do, because you're blending in some senses old with new. And as you're adding the e-commerce element to what might be a pretty, from the outside, a mundane type of business. So kind of explain that a little bit of how coupling e-commerce with the manufacturing can be interesting.
So it's, what I found is, and again, I'm sorry to come back to, like you guys are laser focused on the exit, and every business, and I don't know if you found this, a lot of companies get kind of all over the board. They're eager for a sale, desperate for a sale. Maybe if you're just starting up, anything that comes through the door, you're going to take. Or maybe you're mature and you're on the downside, and maybe you should have sold a few years ago, and now you're almost like kind of scrambling, trying to resurrect, trying to find a newfound energy. And where e-commerce can come in is, with manufacturers, I sell a widget. Okay, I sell a pen. If you can see my pen, and I've been selling it for years. Maybe grandpa started the business or whatever, second generation, or they're the founder, and they've been selling this widget forever. And they have a handful of customers, especially if they're a custom manufacturer. And maybe for your listeners, if you're not a manufacturer and you have the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer, who they manufacture your lawnmower, your whatever, washing machine, your blender, Then you have all the custom manufacturers, which is a vast majority of manufacturers are the folks that make a widget or product that go in that finished product. Those folks, they once they find that one widget to make, and they just crush it for years, and they're in bed with the one customer, and they can, ride the wave and have a good time. But then all of a sudden, if something happens to that industry of no fault of their own, either unfortunately, like right now, oil is difficult, or there's something went obsolete, we can name, Sears, Toys R Us, tons of companies that all of a sudden found themselves obsolete. If you were selling fixtures or products to Sears or products to Toys R Us, and that's your top customer, maybe 50% of your sales, now that's a challenge, and many, unfortunately, many companies are facing that today with the struggle that we're facing now. What e-commerce does, it opens up. I was selling through the front door. I had 5 customers. I had 10 customers. They represented a big chunk of my sales. E-commerce comes in. Now, all of a sudden, I have a new avenue out the back door.
Yeah.
And now I'm selling the same widget. I'm selling the same product. I'm using the same machinery, same equipment, same expertise, same talent, same staff. I have everything is in my corner. Entrepreneurship is risk. It's walking into Vegas, and as an entrepreneur, how can I put the odds in my favor? Well, when you've already mastered this widget and you've been selling it on, they're used to selling it pallet loads, or somebody gives a PO, e-commerce, the resistance or the change is somebody might buy in smaller quantities, or now somebody's going to buy in singles, or somebody's going to buy on less than truckloads, and I need to ship on UPS. So it takes a mental shift, which a lot of companies are very resistant to. I don't have the infrastructure. We can't do this. But if you can embrace it, e-commerce just opens up so many doors of companies, industries that you just never realized that existed. So that's why I'm so passionate about e-commerce, is just seeing amazing opportunities over consistently for 25 years. I've consistently seen it, so.
Yeah, it is cool. I was actually talking to a client that is in e-commerce, but I mean, they're a retail seller, or not a B2B seller of e-commerce products. They're not a manufacturer. And one of their challenges is as they expand their product lines into their customers, trying to buy directly from manufacturers that are not ready to embrace I have to ship a case of this product or a single of this product rather than shipping out 5 pallets to my distribution center.
Right.
And you're right. If you understand how to tackle that operational challenge, you open a tremendous amount of opportunity.
I just talked with a gentleman about a week ago, and same thing. And most people don't want that small. I want to ship hundreds or thousands or pallet loads, truck. I don't want to sell the onesie twosies. I don't want to. And this particular gentleman I was talking to, he was like, "Man, we're doing phenomenal on Amazon," and I'm like. And, I perked up, and I'm a big Amazon proponent. And I'm like, man, you're on Amazon. What, well, we sell our 5s and 10s and what have you. And I'm like, well, are you fulfilling it yourself or through FBA, fulfillment? Right? Oh, we don't touch a thing at all through Amazon, but they're a nuisance. And, he's kind of, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, but Amazon's taking care of everything. I'm like, what if we just put on your website, just like a landing page of a funnel of go to my Amazon store. I'm like, dude, what if you're just driving all those onesie twosies? One thing that I love to preach. I've been doing a number. Obviously, in COVID, I'm on the webinar kick this week. So I'm doing constant webinars, and what I'm constantly preaching is how on my website, how can I help the buyer be able to not help them? How can I just hand it to them? Allow them to make a buying decision at Friday night at midnight. Without having to wait until Monday morning, 7 o'clock for me to open the door. And so it's just constantly, focusing on the customer's problem as opposed to necessarily your solution, So like, I don't want to ship a less than pallet load. Okay, well, let's identify, are you positive there's not a compromise or a great opportunity? This gentleman, whatever, his profit ratio is like, well, when I sell, to my big clients, it's $1. I mean, what do you sell for on Amazon? $8. I'm like, dude,
You're making up money.
Dude, let Amazon ship that all day. Now, I don't have the numbers, and I know somebody out there could dispute that or challenge it, but it's It diversifies your portfolio. So when a guy like you comes in and says, okay, Mr. Entrepreneur, you're ready to sell, you have 5 customers and 30% are with 2 of them and 10, whatever the breakdown is, your ratio, your X is a little less than if we had a nice diverse portfolio with a unique opportunity. So.
Well, and you bring up a really good point. That is one of the first things people look at when they go to buy a company is your customer concentration. They want to go, okay, give me your list of customers. I want your top 50% of your customers. Right. And they don't care if they see a name or whatever. They just want to know how much is the percentage each one. If you got one that's 70%, they're going to say, we're not touching it with a 10-foot pole unless that one customer is one that they need.
Right. Exactly. You're hitting it on the head. If it's a strategic buy and it comes into somebody else's portfolio, great opportunity. But unless you have that match, there's not many people off the street that want to buy that company.
They don't want to touch it. They don't, and an investment buyer won't touch it. They won't touch it. But the interesting thing that you're talking about there is that the profitability selling on that less than truckload, less than pallet load, whatever it is, quantity. If you can drive, if there's enough demand for your product and it doesn't take a ton, you typically will make 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10x on that same product. Right. And that's the thing that's so interesting. Even if you don't have to sell a heck of a lot to make good money doing that.
Correct. And again, I know it's a mind shift, and I'm sure there's plenty of examples otherwise for for a shameless plug. So I just over COVID, I just wrote a book, and it's called Stop Being the Best Kept Secret. And my tagline is manufacturing e-commerce strategies, and manufacturing is a verb, like we're creating, but it's so I have so I have a huge waiting list. It's my mother and my wife. So if anybody wants to get on the waiting list, you can get in line with my wife and my mother. So, but I have 10 or 11 points of, why I love e-commerce. What are the vast benefits for your business? And I lived it. When I had my business in the 90s and it was a wholesale business, I suffered and struggled with receivables. It's why I have no hair left, is because of receivables. So all of a sudden, the 90s hit, and I come in on a Monday and I'm like, geez, I have, 10 orders, and they pay by credit card. And I'm going to put it on my UPS truck, where at the time I had delivery trucks, which, weather, breakdown, just you name it. I had every problem you could imaginable. And I'm like, wait, while I was home over the weekend, I just received a bunch of orders. They're higher profit because I was determined to go B2B. Man, I'm B2B. We're going after businesses, Well, in the 90s, who was buying on the internet? Our generation, Gen X. Yeah. I was going after the business owners. Well, when you and I were in our 20s, the business owners were our age now. Yeah. And they weren't going on the internet. In 1995, I'm going to take a credit card and I'm going to punch it into a computer. Are you insane? And
somebody's stealing it. That's all they're going to do.
Exactly. So for me, so all of a sudden all the Gen X were buying from me over and over and over. And I'm like, my price is lower than what they would pay retail because I'm wholesale. I'm charging them more, so I'm getting better profit margin. I'm being paid before the product goes out the door. Yeah. I'm like, this is a dream come true. I'm like, the UPS truck would back up. I'm like, dude, take it, and I never have to see it again. I don't mean to, sound flippant. We're very, customer service oriented. But, but I didn't have to deliver it. I had no receivables. I was in business 24/7. We ended up going to a fulfillment center. So, I mean, the benefits, it's changed my life, Yeah. And so then it's just a passion of like, well, geez, this worked for me. I was a total train wreck. And I'm like, if I can do it, dude, you can do it, So that's been the drum that I beat.
Yeah. The interesting thing is when you talk about that and what you did on a product basis, I did earlier in my career in a manufacturing company where we actually manufactured checkout counters for grocery stores.
Okay. Yeah.
We had a couple large plants, but what we did is from an operational and a customer perspective, we redesigned the line to be very configurable and standardized, right? Because this was in the time when designers still designed in stuff that wasn't all connected.
Yeah.
And but what we were doing without realizing it is we were creating a configurable set of variables that people could just punch in numbers, and it made it very easy to sell, because I want this model, I want it this long, I want it to with this accent cover, I want this. And as you talk about how you help manufacturers, if I would have had a solution like that back then, I would have made it so the customers could have ordered that thing without even talking to anybody any time of the day or night they wanted to, which would have been groundbreaking in that industry.
Right.
And it's and as you say that, and this is the thing that's always intrigued me a lot about what you're saying, because as you take this concept, it doesn't necessarily have to be a standard product. And you've got an example where you helped a company with, I believe it was a ground strap.
That's right. Yeah.
Explain a little bit about that.
Sure. So, yeah, I don't have an example. And a great thing. So, and again, just did a webinar this week, and I use that I use that example. I have that example in my book, and I have that example, kind of beating it to death. But the thing is I go through that process. I don't want to say it's applicable to, like, as soon as you hear an entrepreneur say, oh, it's for anything and everybody. It's not for anything and everybody. Yep. But for the companies that it's applicable for, the example I used, and I'll get into this in a second, is I was doing my workshop. I'm like, and it was for business advisors here all throughout New York State at the Small Business Development Center. It was for all business advisors. And I'm like, this would be applicable for a pizza. We're like, okay, I want anchovies, I want pepperoni, I want this. Yeah. It could be relevant for insurance, where I'm 51 years old, I have 2.5 kids, I have, whatever that menu is, you could create it. So so what Damon's talking about, so real quick, I work with a custom manufacturer, been around since 1985. Baby Boomer owns it. Same guy that founded it owns it today. I mean, how often do you hear about a guy, or an entrepreneur, man or woman, owns the same business, no business partners, for 35 years?
That's awesome.
Most businesses close in the first, 4 out of 5 close in the first 5 years, and this guy's. So, but again, he's had a great run. He does fixtures for like in-store fixtures for Walmart and Lowe's, and great company, great run. But as the brick and mortar stores are now, everything's focused on e-commerce, they got kind of caught off guard, that customer that's 20, 30, 50% of sales. Yeah. Now what do I do? I'm 30 years in, what do I do? So we started instituting a e-commerce strategy, and as we're going around the shop and just kind of brainstorming, they make this little thing, it's called a ground strap. And they make thousands and thousands of this little thing. It's a ground strap. And a ground strap goes in any electrical device that you can think of. An example I used with you a few weeks ago was planes, trains, automobiles, your appliances in your home, the computer that we've been staring at for the past 2 months. Everything has to be grounded. Otherwise, you guys would all look like me. You'd be electrocuted and shocked and all that. So they make thousands and thousands of these for 2 separate OEMs in the auto and trucking industry. And they have the equipment, they have the machinery, and it's very inexpensive. And they have the expertise, they had all the raw material, and the raw material is readily available, it's cheap, profit margins are fantastic. I'm like, dude, let's take a shot. Like, why don't we just throw a web page up and start marketing these on an e-commerce store? So our investment was a web page. And he's on a WordPress website. So we took, probably most of, people are on WordPress. Yeah. Their e-commerce plugin is called WooCommerce, which is also free, my favorite word. And we put that on, we just almost created like a fictitious line of product and put it on a website, and like, hey, let's roll the dice and see if anybody comes to it. So sure enough, I always call, like, when I work with clients, I call it like those ideal dream clients, dream customers. I call them soulmates. How can we find your soulmate? And so sure enough, an industrial buyer. Then all of a sudden, a OEM comes along, oil industry, agriculture. All of a sudden, Boeing, right in your backyard, Boeing gave him an order. So here's this little manufacturer, in upstate New York, and Boeing, all of a sudden Halliburton buys, Pratt & Whitney buys. Like, it was like multiple Fortune 500 companies buy. So then the challenge was a lot of people were like, hey, well, we like what you have. We like this length, or we love your prices. We like what you have, but we need this length, not what you have. We need this width or a different configuration, just like you're talking about with the cash out, the conveyor belt. So we're like, hey, we went to our web designer. This is a guy I've been working with for like 15 years, phenomenal guy. We're like, hey, can we create like a little software tool where we could make our own, where our customer could come on and make their own software tool, or make their own ground strap rather. And again, the drum that I beat is, how can I help the customer make a buying decision Friday night at midnight without having to wait for us to buy or to open? And so sure enough, man, he just crushed it. So we have this little software tool. When I do a presentation, I go through the slides. I mean, it is so KISS. It is so stupid simple. Like even it's 5 steps. It takes 60 seconds or less. We have a video on each page. And again, if you're listening, for those listeners, it's not about me or this little ground strap example. It's about how can you make it so simple for your customer to buy. How can you create a software tool that's just so easy? And like this, it costs us like a couple grand. And so we have a video on each step. And sure enough, Fortune 500 company, our soulmates. We had a great lead about a month ago during COVID. We had Virgin Hyperloop. And it's one of Richard Branson's, his high-speed train down in LA, 600 miles an hour. I mean, he found our little company and used our software tool for this cutting edge. We're like, we would have never found that customer,
Wow, that's cool.
And to wrap up on that example, this customer right now, his top customers are like Lowe's, Target, Walmart, and then he sells a bunch of other, he's somewhat diverse. But bulk are those 3. Guess who's not buying right now? Walmart, Lowe's, Target, because they're just so laser focused on trying to get product out the door. They're not buying fixtures. So because he diversified, he's in decent shape right now. Yeah. So and he's getting orders daily for for this particular item, and it's 1s and 2s, but he never knows when that one piece is going to turn into that 1,000 piece, or that engineer at Boeing that needs who knows what. So anyway, so I'm sorry for that. Sorry to ramble on, but that's the
no. But I just love it, because you're hitting the heart of what I think is ultimately, for a company like that. Yes, they've got another product line. But for that product, you give an engineer an easy way to get a prototype. You give someone a startup company the way that they can buy 10 of them that could turn into 1 million of them. It just so many things that happen like that. It's just cool as heck, Yeah,
we had a customer in agriculture. It was like I don't know, pig farmer, or I don't know, something. Yeah. And gave the guy, he ordered like $9,000 worth of ground straps. We're like, what on earth, as a farmer, and it was a very heavy duty. And again, we configured it. He used our software tool. And look at the competitive advantage here. So say if somebody was going overseas or cheap imports or what have you, he's created a competitive advantage that nobody else can engage with. They can, again, Friday night at midnight, go on this. They're creating their very own product. It doesn't exist anywhere on the planet. I need 17.5 inches. Well, where are you going to find this item? And again, it's not about me or my example. Think about you or your business. Yeah. And this person on Monday morning, we have the equipment and the flexibility. We make it that day, and it goes out, and and the shipping is phenomenal. So, and here's the last thing for you. So we're like, okay, how can we diversify? We're like, hey, I've been following Jeff Bezos since 1995, being an e-commerce guy, and obviously I'm not quite as successful as he is, but so I've been following Amazon, but I never wanted to go on Amazon. Just, you hear they copy your product or whatever. We put this particular item on Amazon in June. Their product, if you do a search on Amazon for ground straps, they're the number one, organically. We don't pay a penny for advertising. They're the number one option. They actually, if you ever shop on Amazon, you see that little Amazon's Choice. It's the badge of honor saying, like, we give our blessing on this product. They have the Amazon's Choice. They have the bestseller button. And the guy's looking to do 6 figures this year, and it's a $3 item. Yeah. It's a $3 item. He's looking to do 6 figures just with Amazon. And this and again, no receivables, easy. he doesn't do, so again, because he stood up and had the guts to take the chance, it's a nice diversification for this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. Well, I just looked up and I didn't even realize that we've got viewers actually. Joseph Stepke is out there.
Hey Joe.
Yeah. Joe is actually did a comment for us here, and just want to let people know. I realize I don't have Curt's name up on the screen, but this is Curt Anderson with us. And man, we're just talking a little bit here about how some of these companies you wouldn't expect could use e-commerce to help their customers. And you bring up a really valid point with making it easy for the customer to buy.
Right.
And an example that I always drove me crazy, and I was actually talking to someone a couple of years ago about this now, an e-commerce person, is my spouse had to worked in large medical companies.
Okay.
And selling devices, stuff you don't even want to know that they make. Right. Usually. But anyway, the ordering process was so manual that I couldn't believe it. Right. I'm like, they're still filling out purchase orders and junk like that. Right. And you think about the massive amount of time saving that you can do in a company like that, where if I want to buy this product from your company, why are you not making it easy? Why are you not making, even if it's a closed site where you can't get to it, the public can't get to it, but I never have to do anything, And I remember, when was it? It had to be 10, 12 years ago now. Grainger had theirs set up like that.
Yep.
I remember when they very first started to do it, is that I was running a company, and one of my purchasing people said, listen, I want to start buying from Grainger. And I said, why do you want to buy from Grainger? He said, well, they're about the same price as everyone else, but they keep all of our supplies.
Right. They make it easy.
And all we do is go in and we just put how many we want, and they send them every, it's just this. Right. They said, and it was like, oh, and they had everything too, so it just made it so much easier. And the e-commerce piece that people are missing in their businesses could be that piece that really one day saves them.
Absolutely. And I would, as we continue conversations, I'd love to hear your take on this. But I also, again, like my book, in my book, so I talk about, it keeps you in your wheelhouse. E-commerce keeps you in your wheelhouse. And again, especially with custom manufacturers, and you see it with the manufacturers that you deal with, and it's more so on the custom side, but it's, you get the RFQ, and again, a lot of manufacturers are not noted for their marketing expertise and acumen. Yeah. And so when an RFQ comes in the door, man, it's bells are ringing, it's exciting, and yet it's not quite what we do. It's like, I'm over here, but maybe that RFQ's, so we're going to pursue it because I want to keep the machines running. I want to keep staff. I'm, and you find yourself out of your wheelhouse, and I'll just share a quick thing with you. And so, 100 years ago, it was probably like, 2000. Again, I was a train wreck entrepreneur trying to build this business, and the bubble had just burst, and I'm like, what am I, crazy trying to, and I decided to diversify. So I had 5 different things going on. So if anybody talked to me like, hey, Curt, what do you got going on? I'm like, man, I'm diversified. I thought I was cool. And I was trying to tip my tone, like some manufacturing. I was drop shipping. I was wholesaling. I'm trying to do this e-commerce thing. And I wasn't going to get caught being vulnerable with one or two things. I was diversified. Yeah. And so the thing is, I was great at growing sales, but I was not, my bottom line was horrendous. I always said, man, I sold my dollars for 97 cents better than anybody. So unless you sold your dollars for 96 cents, nobody was beating me, man. And so the business was growing. I was spending more than I was making. And I'm like, God, I'm doing something terrible. So I brought a consultant in. And she comes in and she sits down and she's like, hey, tell me about your business. And I'm like, man, I'm diversified. I'm like 30 years old and, kind of, puffing my chest. And she's like, all right, well, tell me about it. And I'm like, well, I do this, and she's like, well, why? So I explain each one. Had no competitive advantage in several areas. She's like, well, why are you doing this? And I'm like, well, because, I'm trying to justify it. Why are you doing this? She goes, I'll tell you what your problem is. You're doing 5 things horribly instead of 1 or 2 things exceptionally.
Yeah.
Get rid of the other 3 or 4 things and focus, put everything you've got into one thing. And I kid around, I go, well, look how good you are. I go, you just solved my problem in 30 minutes. I don't need to talk to you again. And like, we were kind of kidding, but she really did kind of solve my problem in 30 minutes. And with that conversation, she said, well, what's your core? What are you guys absolutely best at? Well, I'm like, well, our legacy, we're a wholesale business. But man, the future, I'm telling you, it's e-commerce. She's like, you focus on e-commerce and and again, so it turned my philosophy around, it turned my focus around. And so I'm sure you see it on a daily basis. And unfortunately, with custom manufacturers, they're so eager to grab that RFQ. It takes them out of the wheelhouse. They're going to buy different machinery, different tooling, different what have you, lacking experience. Now they misquoted it after they find that out after they start making it.
Oh yeah.
Where e-commerce, where this whole process, like that goofy example I just gave with the ground strap, it keeps you, all the engineering is already done. I've already done it. Yeah. When you did that conveyor belt, all that engineering is already done.
Yeah.
And now it's not quite the Henry Ford. You can have whatever color you want as long as it's black. But it's just narrowing down the focus, staying in my wheelhouse, and you're just creeping up competitive advantage where nobody can touch you.
Yeah.
You're just relentlessly focused on being the absolute best at that, whatever problem you solve.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in that company, the interesting thing, what standardization allowed us to do in that company is we went from an 8-week lead time down to a 10-day lead time.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. And we cornered the market. I mean, really,
that's phenomenal.
Just killed it.
Right.
We could do things that nobody else could be, because it all started with the fact, and it's a little different than the e-commerce focus, but it started with the fact that we talked to the customer, because we had 400,000 square feet of manufacturing, and about, I think that time, at 250 odd people in the factory parts of it working, and we had almost about, I think it was close to 40,000 square feet of product that was finished at any one time, that was there because a construction schedule would change.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the frustration of those things would set so long, they would get damaged, we would have to rebuild whatever, and that, because you're trying to store these big things, we figured out that we realized that we needed to be able to cut our lead time within the time frame that the construction schedules were firm. And by doing that, we didn't realize really that we would be able, the standardization process would drop the cost of it by about 30%. And the manufacturing lead time, we knew we were going to do that, but we didn't realize we could get it down to 25% of what it was before.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, what's that, a 75% drop in lead time? I mean, that's just staggering.
We cut the manufacturing space in half. We went from 400,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet, and increased the volume by about 40%, and dropped the SKUs the same by about 50,000 SKUs out of it, and those kind of things. But those the kind of things that you can get when you really think about a business differently, like e-commerce allows you to do, allows you to do things that you just your competitors will not do. Either they're too stuck in their ways, or whatever they are. And I think the example that you have shown is so relevant for so many companies. I talk to, as you said, companies almost daily, and I talked to a company last year, the CEO of a company last year. They sold automotive lubricants, right?
Yeah.
And I forget what size they were. They were, I don't know, they weren't small by any means. It was under 50 million, but not by much. And so nice sized company. Well, they had just started playing with e-commerce, and they were selling a few $1 million worth of e-commerce stuff a year.
Isn't that crazy?
I know, it's nuts when you start to think about this. And it's like, some of these businesses can drive 10, 20, 50% increase in sales just by hitting the customer now that does not want to go to the store.
Right. Here, here's a staggering stat that I threw out this week. So manufactured goods in the United States in I don't have 19's numbers, in 2018 was $6 trillion manufactured goods. Of that $6 trillion, 356 was distributed via e-commerce. That comes out to 5.9%. 5.9%. So there's a 94% upside of e-commerce opportunity of $6 trillion. So I mean, even if you're just like, and that 356 billion grew 22% from 2017 to 18. I don't know what it did from 18 to 19, and it's growing at double digits every year. But even that double digits, you're going from 6% to maybe 7-8%. If somebody's looking for a pivot right now or an opportunity, man, B2B e-commerce, or if you're a manufacturer or distributor, importer, whatever you are, I mean, and that's and you know, back with that where I was all over the board liking that focus. When you get that focus, now you have a keyword strategy. So I mean, the strategy impacts your tactics. You know what I mean? So like if I'm a custom manufacturer, I do CNC, I manufacture, you know, whatever. I'm broad, I'm struggling to get those leads. But when I narrow it and I focus and I've found a market and a niche, it just, now I know what social to do. I know what keywords to attack. It makes, I don't want to say easier, but it just makes things a lot more concise. You know?
Yeah, it's focused. It's focused. You're not doing a little bit for everyone. You're doing a lot for a very deep, very deep market.
Exactly. A lot of times you're nothing to nobody, you know, when you try to be everything to everybody, you know, so it certainly makes it difficult, you know, but
yeah. This is cool stuff, Curt. I'm sure appreciative of you taking the time today. And
absolutely, man, this is my honor. Thank you, dude.
It's great to just talk with you about this stuff, and I could talk about it for hours, but we'll save some of this for another day, because I know we're going to have additional conversations, and
absolutely.
And I've got a few other stories that I'd like us to share in the future on this. But I appreciate your time today. Again, I've got Curt Anderson with us today on the Business Roundtable, talking a little bit about helping businesses explore and utilize e-commerce to diversify their customer base. Curt's someone that can help you out. Now, Curt, if they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, like yourself, I'm not at your level, but I'm a LinkedIn junkie. So, you know, LinkedIn is the best way. I created, I've been blogging. I blog every week, and I've created a bunch of free e-commerce resource guides.
Yeah.
And the website, it's called B2B Tail. So kind of like it's play on words. Instead of retail, it's B2B Tail. So B2B.com. I have a bunch of free resource guides, kind of an e-commerce checklist.
Cool.
You know, fully free to anybody who wants them. And so that's how you can find me. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I forgot to even talk about the fact that I was just reading your LinkedIn articles today and going through some of that stuff, and we'll get to that another time.
Yeah.
Man, just thanks a lot. It's such
thank you, dude. This is an honor, man. I appreciate our friendship, and I love what you do on Thursdays. And any entrepreneurs out there that are looking to grow their business, or they're thinking succession plan, they need to team up with you and Andrew, and I really admire what you guys do. So thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, Curt. And for now, everyone, we're going to sign out, and I will put Curt's information in both in the Facebook and the YouTube, so you can see that as well. But thanks again, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Damon. Appreciate it, buddy.
Bye.